Hi, my name is Bob Tabor with LearnVisualStudio.net, and in this lesson I'm going to show you how to build the most simple C# application, what's commonly referred to as a Hello World application. In other words, it's just going to simply display the words Hello World to a Windows console window, or in other words, a DOS prompt. I'm going to do this twice. The first time I'm simply going to use Notepad and the C# command line compiler. And then I'm going to start over again, and I'm going to show you how much easier it is to develop an application using an integrated development environment, or rather an IDE, like Visual C# Express Edition or even Visual Studio. So you're quickly going to see why you want to use an IDE for software development. For now, just try to follow along. Don't worry if something doesn't make sense to you immediately, okay? Over the course of the next lessons, we're going to dissect every example and explain every line of code, and I'll explain why we wrote what we wrote. So again, the goal here is to create a simple Windows console application that prints the words Hello World to the screen using nothing but Windows Notepad and the C# compiler. And then I'm going to assume that you already installed the most recent version of Visual C# Express Edition or Visual Studio or even the .NET Framework SDK, or Software Development Kit. And you're asking yourself the question, what's next? Well, try this. First thing we're going to do is open up Windows Explorer, and you can use any version of Windows. I just happen to be running Windows 7. And I'm going to click on the C drive, and I'm going to right click to create a new folder called Hello World. You can put this anywhere, but I find that just to get started, this is the easiest place to find the files that you want to work with. There's a number of different ways to create the folder. Hopefully you're already familiar with how to navigate within Windows Explorer and create folders. I renamed the folder Hello World. All right, so now what I want to do is open up Windows Notepad. And here I'm going to type in the following lines of code, and I'm going to do this paying attention to things like capitalization, obviously spelling, the punctuation or the various types of symbols that I use on my keyboard. These are all important. Okay, so type it exactly the way that I type it. And if I'm going too fast, please feel free to pause the video, catch up to me, okay? Or rewind even. Okay, so while you're catching up to me, keep in mind it has to be exactly the way that you see it here, or you're going to get errors whenever you try to compile your application. The capitalization matters. Notice the use of opening and closing curly braces, and also opening and closing parentheses in certain spots. Now, what do each of these do? We'll talk about them later. Notice the use of a semicolon on these two lines of code, but nowhere else. Notice the capitalization on words like hello and world and main, and the lowercase public and class and static and so on. Okay, these are all important. Just make sure everything is exactly the same. I can't emphasize that enough. Beginners often miss the importance of exactness when writing code. Human readers are more forgiving than a code compiler, okay? So now what I want to do is save the work that I've done as, so file save as, and I'm going to navigate to that folder that I created. And I'm going to double click into the Hello World folder. I'm going to change from TXT documents to all files, otherwise I won't be able to save it the way that I want to with the correct file extension. So here I'm going to type in the file name helloworld.cs and then click the save button. Now if I go back to Windows Explorer, I should see single file helloworld.cs, and you can even see that it recognizes it as a C# file because of the little icon that places next to it. Also, make sure that you didn't leave any spaces between the word hello and world. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is go to the start bar at the bottom, and I'm going to type in the word under in the search bar, CMD, and it should show search results with the command prompt. Now, what we need to do is not click this just yet. We need to right click, which brings up a contextual menu, and I want to run as administrator. All right, this will make our life a little easier if we do this. And when our user account control dialog pops up, we want to agree that we want to allow this program to make changes to the computer. So I'm going to click the yes button. All right. So this command application, the CMD application, is also known as the Windows Command Line Interface, or the DOS prompt, or a few other common names. The reason we're doing this is because many of the .NET framework tools can be scripted using DOS batch files, and the C# compiler is no exception. If you don't understand what that means, don't worry. Okay, so now what we want to do is find the directory on our hard drive that contains the .NET framework. So we're going to just use cd ... which will move us from a subdirectory to its parent. And since we're already in the Windows folder, I'm going to type in cd space Microsoft.net. Now we're in the Microsoft.net subfolder. Let's go cd space capital F and framework. So now we're in the framework subdirectory, and then I'm going to do the directory command, dir. All right, and you see quite a few files here. And the reason I'm doing this is because I'm looking for the most recent version of the C# compiler. As you can see here at the bottom, there's a directory v4.0.30319. Your folder might be different, so use the highest number that you have available to you. Whatever that is, I'm going to type in cd space and then v4.0. Now you would type in whatever number is the highest one that you have. Okay, I'm going to type in v4.0.30319. All right, and so now I am in the directory for the latest version of .NET, and specifically C#. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to type in CSC and then /help, and then click the enter key on the keyboard. And you can see that we did find the C# compiler. The CSC is the C# compiler, and by putting the /help, I'm asking for all of the commands that we can add to the compiler, and you can see there's quite a few additional arguments that we can pass if we want to. So we're just going to need a subset of those, and I want you again to type exactly what I type. So here we go. CSC /t:/exe. So we're going to create an executable file. /out: hello world. Whoops. Let's start back over on that. C:/ hello world/hello world.exe. So this is the output. This is the directory we want to save our completed application in, the C:/hello world, the folder we made a little bit earlier, and then this is the name of the file that we want to create, hello world.exe. Space, and then we're going to give it the name of the source file that we want to use, C:/hello world/hello world.cs. That's the file that we created in Notepad. Now, if I left off some of the path names, our new executable the C# compiler may not be able to find the source code if we left it off here, and it probably would create this hello world.exe inside of our .NET framework v4.0.30319. Okay, we don't want that. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter on the keyboard now, and you can see the C# compiler goes to work, and we get no errors. Furthermore, if we come back here to the Windows Explorer, we can see that we now have a new file, an application file called Hello World. If I double click this, now we get a Windows console window with the word Hello World displayed prominently. And if I hit any key, or I guess the return key on my keyboard, the application will exit. All right. Now, if you run into problems at this step, it's probably because one of a couple of reasons. There's a problem with the source code that you write, so I need you to rewind the video and double check what you wrote. Did you write the C# code exactly as I typed it in? And by exactly, I mean exactly, down to the capitalization, spaces, punctuation marks, and so on. Have to have an eye for detail. All right. It could be because there's a problem with that long DOS command that I asked you to type in just this last step. So are you sure that you typed that correctly? And then third, you may have a permissions problem. Even though you're working as administrator in this window, there might be some special security setting that's unique to your computer. So take a few moments and investigate what permissions have been applied to the .NET Framework subfolder. You shouldn't run into any problems when you're running as administrator. There might be something wrong with the way that you have your computer set up, okay? So, and here's a hint, read error messages carefully. It'll probably give you some clues as to which of the three possibilities, A, B, or C, that I just gave you, which one of those are the culprit, okay? You might even search online using the phrases from the error message to find somebody else who reported the same problem, and perhaps there's somebody nice enough out there who helped them figure out what the problem was, and you can use some of that information yourself. So, I want to emphasize something. If you get stuck here, don't let that bother you. Don't get stuck at this step. If it doesn't work for you, don't worry. This is not crucial for you. The fact that you can't get it to work easily is exactly the point that I wanted to make in this lesson. There's an easier way to do this, so keep watching this video. With rare exception, do programmers code and build their applications using just Notepad and just the command line version of the C# compiler. So what I want to do is this. I want to switch gears now. The point of this exercise was to show you that you don't need to use Visual C# Express Edition or Visual Studio, an IDE, an integrated development environment. You can do all your work in Notepad and use the C# compiler if you wanted to. That'd be fine. But I want to show you that there's an easier way to create this exact same application using a modern integrated development environment with emphasis on the integrated part, because we don't need to open a bunch of different windows and create directories and then issue cryptic DOS commands and more. It can all be accomplished along with many other amenities and shortcuts using a single tool. So what we're going to do is now recreate this exact application using Visual C# Express Edition. So in my All Programs, I'm going to navigate and find the Microsoft Visual Studio 2010 Express entry, and then click the Microsoft Visual C# Express icon. Now this might be in a slightly different place. Search around in your start bar to find this application. It should have a little green logo around the letter C#. Or it should look more like this infinity symbol for Visual Studio, depending on which application you're using. So I'm going to click on the logo. And again, I want you to follow exactly what I'm doing here. First of all, I'm going to select File, New Project. This will open up the New Project dialog. I'm going to make sure that I select C# under Install Templates, and then Console Application in this middle pane, okay? And then I'm going to type in the words Hello World, and then click the OK button. And after a moment or so, you can see a project is set up with some source code in the middle. Looks a little bit like Notepad, but we have different colors and things of that nature. And some of the things that we typed are automatically typed out for us, so we get a little bit of a head start here. Now the next thing that I want to do is start typing between this open curly brace and closing curly brace right here underneath the word static void main. I'm going to just use my return key to create a little space for myself, and then I'm going to start typing the word console, and when I do, notice that a little window pops up. We'll talk about IntelliSense later, but I'm going to continue typing. Just ignore this for now. Console.writeLine, and then I'm going to use an open quote, hello world, close quote, close parenthesis, semicolon. Go to the next line, console.readLine, open and close parentheses, and then semicolon. And again, if you need a moment to catch up, pause the video, rewind the video, but you have to make sure that the 2 lines of code you write, first of all, are exactly in this place, and then also you have to make sure that they are exactly typed the way that I've typed them here, with capitalization, with no spaces, with the period, open parenthesis, double quotation marks, the semicolon at the end. These are all important. We're going to talk about every single bit of this syntax. It's simple once you get it explained to you. I assure you that. Don't be intimidated by it at this point. All right, so once you've done all that, then use this toolbar area, and you want to find this Save All button. It has multiple disks, and I'm going to click that, and the Save Project dialog pops up. I'm going to click the Save button and use all the default selections in that dialog. Not going to change a thing. And now I'm going to use this little Start Debugging button. It looks like a green arrow, and this will execute my application. And notice that it pops open a Windows console window with the word Hello World, and all I need to do is hit the return key or the enter key on my keyboard for the application to stop executing. Okay, so let's suppose for a moment that you were not successful, that instead of seeing an application pop open, the console window with the words Hello World in it, that something else happened. You saw, for example, this error message. It says, there were build errors. Would you like to continue and run from the last successful build? First of all, at this point, let's click No. If you see that message, then a couple of things you should take a look at. First of all, there is a list of errors displayed in this error list, usually below the main area where you typed in the code. And there are several different types of errors, so I want to go through them quickly to help give you some idea of what you may have done incorrectly so you can try it again. First of all, if you see this invalid token with an open parenthesis in class, struct, or interface member declaration, chances are that you typed the code in the wrong place, all right? What I need you to do is highlight with your mouse cursor both lines of code, and then hit Control X on your keyboard to cut them and put them on the Windows clipboard, and then Control V to paste them back in between this open and close curly braces. Different commands belong in different code blocks, and we're going to talk about that in an upcoming lesson. But for now, just copy and paste and then try to run the application a second time, and it should work. Another possibility is that you've forgotten to add the semicolon at the very end of each line of code. Notice here when you do that you'll get a little red squiggly line at the end of each line of code, indicating that you forgot the line termination character. So when you attempt to run the application, you'll get the error message and you'll see semicolon expected on both for 2 lines of code. And so to remedy this, you just simply need to add a semicolon at the end of each line. Perhaps you forgot to use the double quotation marks. In this case, the words hello and world both have red squiggly lines underneath them, and when you try to run the application, you'll get some error messages that say close parenthesis expected, line termination character expected, invalid term expression. And so at this point, what's the most helpful thing that you can see here is that these literal words, these strings of letters and characters need to be surrounded with double quotation marks. That will remedy the issue, and you'll be able to run the application again. Perhaps you didn't pay attention to the capitalization when you were typing in the word console or read line, and when you attempt to run the application, you see the name console doesn't exist in the current context. All right. It's because C# is case sensitive, and the correct term is not _C console. It's uppercase C console. And the same would be true then for read line. It's not read lowercase l line, as we can see here. It's read line with a capital L. All right, so again, precision is important with C#. And there are some shortcuts that'll help you get around this, and I'll talk about those a little bit later. Okay, so again, if you find some errors or issues whenever you're typing in the code, Try to pay attention to the error list and let it guide you on how to remedy the situation. It's usually something very small, and once you learn more about the C# syntax, these issues will occur less and less often, or at least you'll be able to spot them, identify them quickly using the little squiggly lines, blue and red squiggly lines. We'll talk about what those mean in upcoming lessons. All right, so assuming that you got things to work, you're well on your way to building applications. Hopefully you can easily see the value of using an integrated development environment like Visual C# Express Edition or Visual Studio to build applications. The IDE manages the files required to write applications. It provides pop-up windows while you're coding to help prompt you what to type next. It gives you feedback about what you typed in correctly and a lot more. So let's recap what we talked about in this lesson. First of all, we started by building a simple C# application using nothing but Notepad and the command line version of the C# compiler. While possible, definitely not a pleasurable experience. This should reinforce why you need to use an IDE like Visual C# Express Edition or Visual Studio. Secondly, writing C# code is an exercise in preciseness. Fortunately, the IDE will help you write code correctly, or at the very least, show you where you went wrong. Third, regardless of whether you use the command line version or the IDE version, your C# code gets compiled into an executable application with the file extension .exe. In .NET terminology, this is called a .NET assembly. And there are different types of .NET assemblies you can create for various scenarios. And I'm going to explain more about code compilation and the process of compilation and how the .NET assembly works under the hood to give you even more insight to the inner workings of your applications. So in the next lesson, we're going to focus on the syntax of the C# code that you wrote. If preciseness is required, then you're going to need some explanation as to what all those little words and symbols actually mean. It's easy once you get a few of the basics under your belt, I assure you. Okay, so we'll see you in the next lesson. Thank you.